Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming today. Welcome. My name is Wendy Tobin. I am the Retirement Programs Administrator for Maricopa Community Colleges. So I'm based at the district office, but I work for all of you across the district at all of our 10 colleges. So I'm happy to be here today, especially thanks to Mr. Steve Peist, who has really spurred this effort of bringing more education specifically about our pension to all the people who need this information. So I'm really happy to be here, and I hope that you all get information and answers that you maybe answers you were seeking, and maybe some of you didn't even know that you needed to know. So I have been with Maricopa for about 6 years now. Prior to that, I was working for the Arizona State Retirement System, our pension. So that is why this is my jam. And I was just reminding myself mentally to try and slow down so that our colleague on the other side of the room can catch up. Okay. So with retirement, specifically with ASRS, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the benefits of ASRS membership. We're really going to focus on the retirement benefit. So we'll talk about that pension calculation, how it works, how you become eligible to retire from ASRS to start receiving that pension, and what the different annuity options are. That's something that you choose at the time that you're applying for retirement, and how those different choices affect what kind of benefit you'll have. And then we'll look at My ASRS, which is the account, your personal account online, and how you can use specifically using that retirement benefit estimator, so that you can go back to your computers later and really dig into that estimator to see what your future benefits might look like. So as an ASRS member, of course, our guaranteed lifelong monthly pension is the main benefit of ASRS membership. Also, as a retiree, you are eligible to enroll in ASRS medical and dental group retiree insurance plans that they offer. And those are available as long as you are an ASRS retiree, regardless of when, whether you enroll in them at the time of retirement or not. You'll always be able, with a qualifying life event or at their annual open enrollment, to enroll in those plans if you decide to do that later, but not at first. So that's not something we'll discuss today, but I want to make sure that everyone is aware of it. Also, our long-term disability income replacement plan. This is a little confusing just because our other disability programs are through our Maricopa benefits, but this one is specifically through the ASRS, so it is not tied to any of the other benefits rules. It is specifically for ASRS members. So you could be a part-time employee eligible for ASRS. That means you're also eligible for long-term disability if that was something that you needed to apply for. But again, this is something before we retire, so we're not really going to speak any further about LTD today. And survivor benefits. Survivor benefits, specifically before you retire, those are really just the contributions you've paid in, all of the matching employer contributions, and interest, 7% interest. All of that goes to whoever you've got designated as your beneficiary or beneficiaries before retirement. But when you're retiring, on your retirement application, you'll actually be choosing maybe what kind of beneficiary you would have, and that's going to be based especially on which annuity option you're choosing. So we will talk about that as we talk about the annuity options, but there are also survivor benefits prior to retirement that are different. So as an ASRS member, as soon as you become eligible, and as a full-time employee, that's on day one, we all get wages on our paychecks, and from those wages, we're paying contributions to ASRS. So when you look at your paycheck, so this is an example, and in the center of it, you can see on the left side, we have our before tax or pre-tax deductions. And that's where if you look at your pay stubs, you'll be able to see Arizona State Retirement And that is a dollar amount that's taken from that paycheck. You can also see on the right-hand side, under the employer paid benefits, the Arizona State Retirement is matching. It's because the employers are required to match our contributions 100% on every payroll. And that's because of state law. Everything about ASRS is structured in our state law. And that's also why it doesn't matter what Maricopa's policies are. If they conflict with the ASRS structure, ASRS takes precedence because it's set up in state law. So the contributions are just a percentage of your wages. And those are going to be going into your account balance. But that's not exactly what is going to determine your pension that you're going to get each month. The pension is actually calculated on this pretty simple formula, but there can be additional things that change it a little bit. But the basic formula is these three items that are just multiplied together. You have your total years of service credit, and we'll discuss what makes service credit, an average monthly compensation, and we'll talk about that as well, and a graded multiplier. So that first one, ASRS service credit. Every time we have a paycheck, we've got contributions coming out of our check and going over to ASRS. So each month that we have a paycheck, a new month, we have a month of service credit. Even if you only had one paycheck that month, you still would have service credit for the whole month because you had a contribution for a pay period in that month. Now it's different for us because we are employees at an educational employer. Back in the beginning, before ASRS existed, Arizona had a teacher's pension. And I believe once you had 30 years in the teacher's pension, you would get $50 a month, and that was your pension. When they started the ASRS, that was 1953. And so, of course, state retirement system, it originally, like they're thinking state employees, right? But then they bring in the teachers. Okay, so everybody who was teaching at the time, if they hadn't gotten their teacher's pension yet, then they were migrated into the Arizona State Retirement System. And so all of us at employers, about 700 different employers in the ASRS right now. So all the employees, we all are in the same system together. Now about 2/3 of the ASRS is made up of educational employees, right? Education members. And so that's a little bit different, especially before, when we didn't have summer sessions or, school districts. Those teachers, they had it was a 9-month year and that was it. They didn't work the other 3 months during the year. And when they were structuring things and bringing the teachers into the ASRS, they didn't want to penalize them for the fact that their job is for those 9 months and not during summer. It wouldn't be fair that they didn't earn, enough to retire just because of the job that they're in. So they actually structured it so that every employee of an educational employer in the ASRS, whether you are a teacher, faculty, staff, it doesn't matter. We all earn service credit on a 9-month year basis. So what that means is every time we get, a new fiscal year, we earn a month of service credit. We're going to earn 0.11 of a year because that's 1 out of 9 months in a year. If we're not working for an educational employer, working at, the state or, city or whatever, we're going to earn service credit on a 12-month year. Now, that doesn't mean that we actually earn service credit faster. It does mean we earn service credit faster, sorry about that. But it doesn't mean that we earn more than other non-employer members. It just means that we earn it faster, and then we still have to pay those contributions for the rest of the year because otherwise we wouldn't have our full compensation included in our pension. So we do want to make sure that we don't get shortchanged. But let's look at how that fiscal year works. It is a little funky because we're used to thinking of, 1 through 12, January through December. So what we do, since the fiscal year starts July and ends June, Once we have that first paycheck with a contribution in July, we earn that 1 month of service credit. So then by the time we've gotten to March, we've gotten our full year, right? We still need to continue contributing through the summertime until we start the new fiscal year, but we're just not going to exceed 1 year of service credit. Okay. Okay, so the second piece, we've got service credit as the first part of the pension calculation. The second piece is average monthly compensation. So when you are retiring, the ASRS is going to look at your history of compensation. They're basing that on the contributions. So they have a set contribution rate for everybody. So if I'm paying, 11.86% on my wages, they can figure out my compensation backed out of 11.86% is whatever that is. So they're looking at your compensation for the last 120 consecutive months. If you've got more than that time, then that's as far as they look. So within that, 10-year range, if you were a member of the ASRS before July of 2011, they're going to look for the highest consecutive 36 months within the 120, within the 10 years, right? If you were a member starting on or after July 1st, 2011, that average is going to be a little broader. It'll be 60 months or 5 years, but it's still within the same 10-year range. Now, the reason they changed this is because they made some plan design changes that took effect back in 2011, some of them in 2010 as well. But one of them was they recognized that people are living longer in retirement. And so, if we wanted to make sure that ASRS continued to be stable and can be a healthy system so that we all can continue to receive that benefit for life, they needed to make some changes just to protect the fund and make sure that it was going to be sustainable. One of those was to broaden that average of your compensation so that, first of all, it's less likely that people are going to get away with illegal pension spiking, which is where you try to have a whole bunch of money in those last 3 years just so that your pension will be based on that instead of, the most of your career. But also it just makes it more representative of what you were really earning and therefore what you were contributing into the ASRS. And of course, this is not, one person, this is just spread amongst all of the membership. So this is one way that they implemented a change that would help improve sustainability and health of the fund. So we've got service credit times average monthly compensation times the third piece, which is our graded multiplier. It's a multiplier and it changes, it grades up as you hit certain milestones, and that's based on your service credit. So if you have less than 20 years of service credit when you retire, your graded multiplier, your multiplier will be 2.1%. If you hit 20 years, but not yet 25, it'll be 2.15, et cetera. And then if you've got 30 or more years, that's the max at 2.3%. So those are those three pieces, right? Okay, so now we know how the pension is calculated, but how do we know when we're eligible to retire? There's two ways to be eligible to retire in the ASRS. You're either early or you're normal. So early retirement is when you are at least age 50 and you have at least 5 years of service credit in ASRS. This means that your pension is going to be reduced. It will be reduced by a certain, factor that's based on, your age, your years of service. And that's a permanent reduction. So if you retire before reaching normal retirement, if you retire early, whatever your pension is, it's still going to be that. It's not going to increase once you reach normal retirement because everybody will eventually age into normal retirement. But it'll be, so that's something to consider when you are planning to retire and trying to figure out when, if you're not hitting or normal retirement yet, that's a consideration to see how does that affect what your monthly pension is going to be, and could you work longer? Okay, so normal, of course, means you're not early. Now, there are many ways to reach normal retirement, but The good news is you only have to reach one. If you only reach one, that's great. You're still at normal retirement. If you reach all of them, that's fine. You were at normal retirement when you hit the first one. So these are also a little bit different depending on when you became an ASRS member. So the first two are age 65 with any amount of service credit and age 62 with at least 10 years of service credit. Both of those are applicable to everybody. So if you meet one of those criteria, you're at normal retirement. So if you retire from that point, it won't be early. It won't be reduced for being early. So if you are a member of ASRS prior to July 1 of 2011, you have a third way to reach normal retirement. And you've probably heard of this term, and that's 80 points. Points means your age plus your years of service credit. So if you're 50 and you've got 30 years, you've got 80 points. If you're 58 and you've got 27 years, you're at 80 points because that equals 85, right? It's 80 or more. So it doesn't matter if you've got 90 points. I hear people tell me that all the time. I've got, 85 points. I got 87 points. I got 20, 92 points, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just that hitting 80, that is what counts for points, right? So that's what retirement eligibility, normal retirement eligibility is if you're a member before July 1, 2011. If you joined on or after July 1, 2011, you still have age 65, you still have age 62 with at least 10 years of service credit. And then instead of points, you have these two additional ways to reach normal retirement. Age 60 with at least 25 years of service credit, or age 55 with at least 30 years of service credit. Now, some of you who are better at math than I am might notice that 60 plus 25 and 55 plus 30, they both equal 85. How interesting. And the reason is because when the legislature was making these plan design changes to help improve the health of the fund, and they recognize that people are living longer in retirement, et cetera, they thought, okay, let's change this 80 points to 85 points because, people are living longer in retirement. So wait a little bit longer to reach normal retirement if points is the way that they're trying to reach it. So they did change it to 85, but before that law went into effect, they changed it again. And they said, forget the 85 points, just these two. So you can't do any combination of 85. It's only these two that count as, reaching normal retirement. So if you're, 58 and you've got, what is that? 28, I don't know. Math is not my strong suit. If you've got, you're more than 55, but you don't have quite 30 years, you're not at normal retirement yet. You would need to wait until you reach one of those items. Okay. Okay, so we talked about what the formula is and how to be eligible to retire. Now we're actually going to talk about what do we have to know, what do we have to choose when we're retiring? And that's the different ASRS pension annuity options. There are actually 7 of them, but they're really in 3 categories. The first one is the straight life annuity, and that's really just the formula. It's the highest amount of your pension you can have because it does not take into account a guarantee that anything will be left for a beneficiary. So straight life annuity is just, it is what it is, and then there's no reduction based on preserving a benefit for someone else. The second category is the joint and survivor, and there are 3 levels of that. The 3 levels are 50%, 66 2/3%, and 100%. And I'll go into that in a moment. I think okay. We are going to go into more detail. And the third category are the term certain options. And these also have 3 different levels. And there are 3 different terms: 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And those are the least clear, I think, for people to understand. And I think they're the least popular options that are chosen, but they are available. Okay, so the first one, we did talk about the straight life annuity and how it's not reduced because it's not guaranteeing something for a beneficiary. But in Arizona, if you are married, you can't choose the straight life annuity unless your spouse consents that. There is a spousal consent waiver that is through the ASRS that they would need if you are married and you want to select straight life annuity. Okay. So joint and survivor, those 3 levels. So you would choose one of those levels. The spousal consent law. So in Arizona, what it really says is if you're married, you have to choose, annuity so that your spouse receives at least 50% as primary beneficiary. So if you choose a joint and survivor, the lowest one is 50%. So if you choose one of those that satisfies that spousal consent requirement, they don't need to consent to that because you're going to be choosing them for at least 50% as primary beneficiary. So that's if you choose your spouse and you use a joint and survivor option. So what a joint and survivor option does is it says, okay, if your pension is this amount and you've chosen one of these percentages, when you pass away, your survivor, the person that you've chosen, will get that percentage of what you've been getting. So for example, if I choose joint and survivor 50%, and let's say that works out to my monthly benefit being exactly $1,000, not likely, but for easy math, I'll get $1,000 every month for the rest of my life. If I chose 50% joint survivor and I pass away and my survivor's still living, they will get 50% of what I've been getting. So 50% of $1,000 is $500. They'll get $500 for the rest of their life. So it's kind of, depending on the circumstances, what happens, it could potentially be, 2 lifetimes that the ASRS is paying, based on this one member, right? So 100%, let's say I chose 100% joint survivor and I'm getting $1,000 a month. Then when I pass away, my survivor would get $1,000 a month for the rest of their life. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, now to the term certain. This is really useful when someone is retiring and they have a particular need for, funds for a specific, time period. For example, I think the most common example of this is, let's say you're, really close to paying off the house. The mortgage just got 7 years left, and you want to make sure that no matter what, there's money for that mortgage payment to finish it off. And so 7 years, maybe I choose a 10-year term certain. So then my pension would be reduced a certain amount, and I'll be guaranteed that term. So if I choose 10-year term, whatever that amount is, will be paid no matter what for at least 10 years. So if I pass away during that term, the remainder of the term, those payments will be paid to the beneficiary that you've chosen. So no matter what, they can pay off that house mortgage. Now, if I choose 10-year term and I outlive the term, 10 years are done, what happens then is my monthly pension is going to pop up to the straight life annuity. But from that point forward, there won't be anything left for a survivor, for a beneficiary once I pass away. So any questions about that?
There is a question in the chat. And so it says, from the previous slide, why would anyone want to pick something less than 100%?
Well, that's a great question. Why would anyone pick less than, well, so there's many reasons why you would pick any one of these annuity options. But one reason is if you're choosing someone as your survivor for joint and survivor that is not your spouse, then you are restricted, may be restricted on which options you can choose depending on their age compared to yours. So I could choose, let's say I chose my sister and she's, within 10 years of me. So I could choose, I think 100%. Let's say I chose my grandchild. My grandchild is more than I think it's 24 years or something like that. So much younger than me that I wouldn't be allowed to choose 100% or 66 and 2/3, but I could choose 50% for my grandchild. So if it's your spouse, it doesn't matter if there's an age difference or not. Spouse age difference doesn't matter. You can choose any of those options. But if it's not a spouse, then it depends on how much younger they are than you. That could limit which option you can choose. Another reason you might choose something other than 100% is based on your individual financial circumstances. If you want to make sure that, again, if there's a bill that has to be paid and you want to guarantee at least a certain amount of income, but you don't need to, do the full 100% to achieve that goal, then you might choose something different. So it's really going to be an individual choice if they have all those options, or they'll be limited to which option if it's not a spouse as their survivor. Does that answer the question?
There is a follow-up. It says, does it affect the total amount that you can get or that you get?
So yes, when you choose anything other than a straight life annuity, so if you choose a joint survivor and you choose a different percentage, that definitely affects the amount that you'll get. And we'll look at this when we do some examples of how to use the benefit estimator. But yeah, these are all calculated on your individual information. So it's not like the teacher's pension where there's a flat, $50 a month for 30 years of service.
Thank you.
Great segue. So if we're going to really be able to estimate those things, excuse me, we need to be able to log into our My ASRS account. Has anybody not registered your account yet? Okay, great. If somebody needs that information, I can send that to you later. Just contact me and I'll make sure that you get that information. So it's important to have your My ASRS account registered because it protects you from someone else logging in and registering that account, stealing your identity. It's also really a great idea to make sure that you have beneficiary designations in place even now before retirement because of the survivor benefit. If you don't have anybody set up and you pass away before you retire, the ASRS has to go with the order in the state law. So if you wanted to make sure that someone that's not in that order, like maybe it's, I don't know, not your spouse, not your, whatever, set up your beneficiary designations now. And those can and might change when you're retiring and you're choosing your annuity option. You also want to use your My ASRS account to make sure that your contact information is up to date. Pro tip, don't use your work email address on your My ASRS account, because if you, leave your job and then you need to unlock your account, you're going to have to call the ASRS. You're going to have to prove your identity, because you wouldn't be able to use the unlock code because it's going to an email address that doesn't exist anymore, right? So it's also great. I always, think when you're having an especially rough day, go into your My ASRS account, start playing with those numbers, right?
And Wendy, if I can share one thing,
Yes.
for this for being Debbie Downer. If for some reason your marital status changes from the time you registered and set up until, please do make that change in a timely fashion. Otherwise, you're in court and fighting over this, and you don't want that. So, please keep that current and what happens.
Great point. And if you were to have a divorce and you have a court order, a qualified domestic relations order, make sure that you're providing that paperwork to the ASRS so they have that on your account. It's going to make things simpler when you do retire because that extra processing has to happen.
Can you set it up like in a trust? Can you do it for a trust?
Before retirement, you can have a trust as your beneficiary.
Okay.
You can actually have multiple primary and secondary beneficiaries. After retirement, if you're choosing a joint survivor, you can't choose a trust. It would have to be a person because it's for their lifetime, and a trust doesn't necessarily have one.
Cats. I don't have kids and I don't have a husband. So.
And Wendy, really, Oh, really quick.
Go ahead, Lynn.
When I was going to say, when maybe people are in the room, if we could have them use the mic because they're not coming in super clearly.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. And the other thing is, when people sign up for the first time, that enrollment code is something that they would get from you. Is that correct?
Right. It is available on the employee portal for the district. But if you need help finding that, I can definitely point that out to you. Okay. So when you log into my ASRS and you go to look at your retirement estimator, your benefit estimates, it's going to, most of us are going to see when we log in a table with different columns that are representing different milestones for retirement. For example, your first early retirement, if you haven't yet reached that, your first normal retirement, if you haven't yet reached that. If you haven't reached 30 years of service, then you would have one that says next graded multiplier. Or if you're not yet 65, you might have one that has age 65, maybe all of those. It's going to depend on your particular circumstance. But this is what you do to find this information. So when you log into my ASRS, you're going to see this menu. Everything's on the left side menu. Yes.
So when she was talking about the code or whatever just a minute ago, is that a different sign-in than?
No, so the enrollment code is before you've got this.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the first time that you need to create your account, or you need to, if you've never done it, then you need a code so that it'll come to the employer to verify. Okay, so you're good. Yeah, after that, you're logging in. Yes.
What happens if you work, let's say for NAU, then there's Maricopa, then NAU, then Maricopa again, with no break, no time in between. So what happens if?
Oh, I think you got to turn it on.
I was going to say, if we can repeat the
So what
question.
happens if you work for, let's say, a state university, and then you come to Maricopa with there's been no time in between the two positions? Do we have to do anything to, change the reporting employer?
So when you come to work for Maricopa and you've already got a my ASRS account from another employer, it doesn't stop your contributions are still going to go directly to your account. But the ASRS does request that when you have a new employment that you're contributing, that you do like the first time registering with that employer's enrollment code. It's really for their purposes of verifying things. For example, if you needed to apply for a long-term disability and they need to verify when did you start. Those are the kind of things that ASRS does say, yes, please do that.
All right, so if you started at Maricopa, went to NAU, then came back to Maricopa, you're good.
Each time you start a new employment,
Okay.
You would need to re-enroll. It's not going to create a different account, but it is like the process. So you'll click on first time registering, even though it's not your first time registering, but that's the only place you can find the enrollment code where you plug that in. Then as you go through that process, the website's going to know that you already have an account. So they're not going to have you create a new one, but they are going to have you like go through, make sure that things are still current, like your address and all that stuff. But yeah. Yes. Yeah. Somebody have a question? Okay. Okay, so this is what it looks like when you log in. You got this left side menu. If you look, the second section down is where it says your benefit estimates. So that first one there is retirement. So here's an example, and just for disclosure, this is completely made up data. This is not anyone's actual data. Okay, so this is, we're looking at this table. There's a lot of stuff there. It might be a little confusing. I want to point out what each of these rows mean because sometimes it gets confusing. So retirement date is the first one. Obviously, that's the first day of retirement. That's the date that you're choosing. So that's what that row is. And then, of course, your age at retirement, that's self-explanatory. Years of service, that's how much service credit you would have at that date. Keep in mind that the ASRS website is going to assume that you'll continue as you are now until that date. So it's going to assume that, by 2035, that person is going to have 22.46 years of service because they're currently contributing. And by that time, they'll reach 22.46. So if you actually stop contributing before then, you'll want to make sure that you change this information. And we'll talk about how to do that, because otherwise it's going to assume that you're going to have more service credit than you will. And you don't want to overestimate your pension, because that's a pretty big disappointment. Okay, in this example, this person was a pre-July 2011 member, and so therefore points is listed on there. Graded multiplier, that's based on the years of service credit that are in that column. Average monthly compensation, that is what we were talking about earlier when you look at the last 10 years and you find the highest consecutive 36 or 60 months and take an average of that. Okay, those last two, monthly benefit and annual benefit. Monthly benefit, that means this is your pension payment. This is the benefit you'll receive from ASRS each month.
Is that after taxes or before tax or after tax?
All of the ASRS stuff is going to show you gross. It will not show you, after tax numbers. It will show you before tax numbers. Annual benefit is just 12 months of the monthly benefit. That's all that is. So when you're looking at this table, average monthly compensation is based on what you are making, what your salary is. Monthly benefit and annual benefit, that's what ASRS will pay you as a pension payment, okay? All right, so let's look at this example here. We know that this is normal retirement, so it's not going to be reduced for being early. And we remember that pension formula we talked about, your service credit, 22.46, times your average monthly compensation, 3620, times your graded multiplier, 2.15%. If you multiply that, you're going to come up with, 1748.06, and that's exactly what it says. Great news. Now, what if we are at early retirement? When we do the math this way, service credit, 15.02. Average monthly compensation, 3620. And graded multiplier, 2.1. If we multiply that, we've got 1141.82. That is certainly a far cry from 502.40. So what happens? This is an effect in this circumstance of how much this person is far away from normal retirement. So this is the result of the reduction that happens when you retire early. So how do we figure this out? In the, I actually have it. So Road to Retirement Guidebook looks like this. If you've seen it before. Okay. In the back, there are early retirement reduction percentages. And this is different based on when you join the ASRS, before or after July 1, 2011. So in this circumstance, we can see that this person's age, they are a pre-2011 member, pre-July 2011 member. So their age, which is the left side column, and their years of service, which is the rows. If we find where those two connect, so we've got age is 50 and years of service credit is 15. So with age 50 and between 10 and 17 years, that's 15, that reduction is 44%. That's how much of the benefit that they would receive. So when we did the calculation and we had 1141.82, if we multiply that by 44%, that's how it comes up with 502.40. So as you can see, it's got these percentages here, right? That's pretty, far away from, that's one of the lowest that you can be, right? As far as retiring early, having only 44% of what your monthly benefit would be. You can see as you look at the age And as you look at the years of service, those correspond with as that person approaches normal retirement. And of course, 100% once they reach normal retirement. So when you're looking at those tables, if you're going to be early, the closer you get to normal, the less that reduction is going to be. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Okay, and then this is the next multiplier. So you can see this, the difference between 22.46 at normal retirement in that first column and the second column, or the last column, sorry, for next multiplier. So 22.46 and then 25 years. You can see that kind of in the middle where it says graded multiplier. That's where you can see that it jumped up to 2.2. That's at 25 years. So that person hasn't, next multiplier for that person isn't the maximum graded multiplier, but 25 is the next to last. Okay, so what if you want to see maybe something a little bit different than this? That's where this more options button can be really helpful. So what if we say, I want to look at something that's close to what I have here as this next multiplier column, but things are a little bit different. So I'm going to click at the bottom of that column on more options. And it's going to bring up this screen with this different tabs. Now this first tab is member information, and here you can actually change information. So not that you would choose to change your date of birth, it's not humanly possible, but it does actually let you do it, and that's how I that's how I was able to come up with these examples. Okay, so if you want to change, you know, what that retirement date is that you're looking at, you can change it here. If you do change that, make sure that you're also changing the service credit if that is, you know, what needs to happen. Also, the ASRS isn't going to project, you know, any kind of increases to our salary. So if we, you know, if we get cost of living adjustments or pay progression or whatever, ASRS, their website isn't going to know. It's not going to, you know, assume that or project that. So if the further away you are from retirement, you might think, well, I think like by then my salary is going to increase, you know, going to have some increases. So if you want to, here is where you can actually change the average monthly compensation to something closer to what you think it might be. Of course, this is always going to be speculation, and this is always an estimate. So, but that's where you can do it. So that's what you can do on the first tab. The second tab is these retirement options. This is where you have the ability to see something more than just the straight life annuity, because that straight life annuity is the only thing that's going to populate on the main benefit estimate. So if you want to see all of them, you can see that bottom text there says select all the options listed above. So that'll just check all of them. But if you just want to see, okay, I've got straight life annuity, and I also want to see what the joint survivor options would look like. How would my estimate change if I chose one of those? You're going to have to choose, you know, the percentage. So 66 and 2/3, 50%, 100%. And then it does say, what is the beneficiary date of birth? As we mentioned earlier, the options you have available to you, if it's not a spouse, are going to be limited possibly based on that beneficiary's date of birth. So it asks you what their date of birth is, and also, is it your spouse or not? So in this example, we're going to put in a spouse with this birth date, and we're going to see what those three joint survivor options are going to look like. Now, this third one is a partial lump sum. This is optional. This just allows you to include this in your estimate if you want to see how it would look. Partial lump sum is where the ASRS allows you to take, so the straight life annuity amount up to 36 months worth of that, so between 1 and 36 months, that as a lump sum upfront. Of course, that does reduce what you will actually be receiving each month, but it does let you take, you know, this partial lump sum upfront if that's something you want to do. If you want to see how it would affect what you're going to get, you can always, play with this estimator and come back and change the number of months and see how that looks for you. But you're not required to do that. Also, something to note is partial lump sum is one of the complications that can cause your retirement calculation to be a little bit more complex than just a humdrum everyday kind of calculation. Most new retirees, if they don't have a complex calculation, they're going to be getting estimate checks. They're going to be getting estimated payments during that calculation time to help bridge the gap from their last paycheck to their first official pension payment, because the ASRS is going to take 45 to 90 days to calculate your pension. But if you have a complicating factor like a partial lump sum, you're not going to get that until everything's finalized, because they can't estimate your partial lump sum and pay it to you and then like, oops, we overpaid you, we got to pull some back. They don't want to do that. So that's something to keep in mind as well. This last tab is the health insurance premium benefit. This is also optional. Now, the health insurance premium benefit, there's two different things here that I'll mention. So when you retire from ASRS, I mentioned that you can enroll in their medical or dental programs. As long as you're an ASRS retiree, you're eligible to enroll in those. If you do have an ASRS plan for medical or dental or both, or if you retire from Maricopa and you take COBRA coverage, which is continuing your Maricopa coverage, not subsidized by the employer anymore, and you can do that for up to 18 months. But since it's not subsidized and it's through the ASRS employer, ASRS will treat your COBRA coverage the same as an ASRS retiree coverage for the purposes of this premium benefit. So the premium benefit is kind of like a discount on your premium. It's a subsidy. So because when you retire, you don't have subsidized coverage like we do as employees that are on employee coverage. The ASRS will, it's an extra amount that actually they've funded it from employer contributions, but it goes to help offset those out-of-pocket monthly premiums for healthcare as a retiree. So it's just a little extra. You do have to have at least 5 years of service credit to qualify for premium benefit, but as long as you're a retiree and you've got an eligible plan like an ASRS plan, or if you took COBRA at retirement, you can get that premium benefit. So if you want to see like what you can get, you can actually choose this to include it on your estimate. Now, the optional premium benefit estimate, that second row, that one is a little different. So it is the same benefit. It's the premium benefit, which the health insurance premium benefit is, you can figure out how much it is because there's a simple table and you find out, okay, before or after age 65, how many years of service credit, 5 plus, or, up to 10. If you got 10 or more, it's the same. And you just find your spot on the chart, and that's the monthly premium benefit. If you choose an optional premium benefit estimate, optional premium benefit says, I want, not only am I going to assume I'm going to take the coverage that I'll have the premium benefit, but I want to guarantee that my survivor gets it too. That will reduce your premium benefit a certain amount. And then after you pass away, your survivor, so keeping that coverage, would also get that, whatever that estimate is. So for the sake of clarity, I'm not going to include that on our estimate because it's really getting in the weeds. Okay. Yeah, and then I'm going to not choose Medicare eligibility just to make that simpler too. So but that is stuff that you can change on this estimator tool for how you want to include data in your estimate. All right, so we've got all of these tabs looked at, and we're going to go ahead and click the calculate button. The beneficiary date of birth. So I think that's because I chose yes on the health insurance premium benefit estimate. So that's so that it can consider whether or not they're going to be Medicare eligible. All right, so here's our estimate, right? We've got this future date at retirement, what the age is going to be, how much service credit, the average monthly compensation, average monthly salary, graded multiplier. So our results, our straight life annuity here is going to be 1991. That's what we saw on the original table. Here's where they show you that health insurance premium benefit. Basically, it means if you are covering more than just yourself on your medical or dental, you're going to get it $260 a month with this person's estimate because they've got 10 plus years of service. If you chose just retiree coverage, you would get $150 a month. So that's just the premium benefit there. And then let's look at the actual annuities. So the first one, that 1991, that was our straight life annuity. And then we're looking at the 3 different joint and survivor options. So for this person, instead of 1991, if they chose, let's go to the bottom, 50%, it's only going to drop it from 1991 to 1925, 61. So they'll get 1925, 61 every month the rest of their life. When they pass away, their survivor would get half of that, which is 962.80 for the rest of their life. So this is how you can see like what kind of a difference it would make if you chose each of those joint and survivor options. And you might think, you know, like someone commented in the chat, 100% joint to survivor option in this case, we're dropping from 1991 to 1864 a month. And that's not a huge drop. It might be completely worth it to choose 100%. But this is how you can play with those numbers to see what it really, you know, realistically might look like for you. Now, if anyone has ever been to the ASRS website, you know it's like drinking from a fire hose. So there's a lot of ways to find a lot of different information, but I tend to recommend these 2 as a good place to start. The first one is member videos. They've got a ton of different videos, different topics on there. One piece of those videos is their education meetings. So they have the road to retirement, right? And so they've got different routes, route 1 through 4. Route 3 and route 4 are actually not just, you know, online. They're actually a whole meeting. So if you've ever been to the pre-retirement sessions that we do, those are the route 3 that the ASRS presents. But the route 3, a pre-recorded version of it, is actually available on their member videos. So if you go today and go to that page, you can actually find the route 3 meeting, and you could watch the whole meeting if you wanted to, or, you know, click on different parts of the meeting or whatever. It's available anytime because that's on the public website. You don't even have to log in to see that. They also have route 4 on there, pre-recorded. Route 4 is for when you're, you know, within 6 months of retirement. It's a little bit more granular for things that you're like really applying for the retirement now. Route 3 is for when you're within about 3 years. So it's a little broader, but that's there. You can also log into my ASRS and sign up to go to a live version of those webinars for Route 3 and Route 4. The other place I recommend is Retirement Central because, of course, it's exactly what it sounds like. They've collected, you know, their most frequently needed pieces of information, those pages, and they kind of collect them in one spot. Right on that page, they've got on the upper right side, it's got the button to log into my ASRS, which is also many different places around the website. And next to that is the member handbook, which is actually this Road to Retirement guidebook. So that's easy place to find that. And it also leads to, you know, the page that talks about the annuity options. If you want to watch their video about the annuity options, because maybe something didn't gel the way I was explaining it. They've got one about, you know, can you afford to retire, where it talks about the cost of health insurance and things like that. So there's lots of stuff there on Retirement Central that can kind of point you to seek out different things. But if you start in these smaller spots, then you can dig down to what you really are looking for. Okay, so this is what the member videos page looks like generally. Probably looks a little different now because this is a dated screenshot when I took it. But you can see under general videos where there's the orange, that first one is Route 3, and then Route 4 is right next to it. That one on the right that says your ASRS benefits explained, that's kind of like Route 1, just understanding what do you get out of being a member of ASRS? What are the benefits of this membership? Because some people don't want to be members. Other people do want to be members. So, if, regardless of which side you're on, of course, as you're getting closer to retirement, you're definitely happy that you have it. But it really can help you understand, like, there's more than just, this future far off concept of retirement to ASRS. Okay, so this is that Retirement Central page, upper right, my ASRS login, and then the member handbook, and then these other topical pieces of the ASRS website that you really want to look at as you're trying to think about retiring. And I think that's all. Yep. So, what questions? Thanks, Steve.
No problem. Yes. Seem too long to lock up.
So my question just is with the optional health benefits, how do they relate to the Medicare plans? You said it's too complicated, but I would be interested in that. Is it supplemented? Is it lieu of? Is it in addition to?
So the ASRS has non-Medicare plans. They've got 3 of them for medical. And they've got 2 custom group Medicare Advantage plans, an HMO and a PPO. So those are the plans. The premium benefit is money to help offset the monthly premiums for those plans. So, for example, I think the 2026 PPO Medicare Advantage plan, I think that premium is like, I want to say $238, something like that. Actually, I can find out. Let's go to the website. So if you go to retirees, this is where all that stuff is. So the main page is called healthcare. And then further down, you can choose, any of these pages. The premium benefit is here. So if we scroll down the premium benefit page, here's where we can see what that would look like. So on the left side, we've got the years of service in that column. So at 10 plus, that's the max that you can have. So we'll just go across here. So if you've got, you're under 65 and it's just yourself, you're covering on, either the ASRS medical or COBRA medical from retiring from Maricopa, you would get $150 a month, basically discounting your premium. If you've got medical or dental, either one with more than just yourself, like maybe your spouse also, you could have like retiree only medical, but retiree independence on dental. That would qualify you for the $260 a month. It's only going to be up to what your out-of-pocket premiums actually are. So if you're only doing dental, $260 is way more than what the premium would be. So it would only cover up to what the out-of-pocket premium is. And then the next section of columns there is when you have Medicare, if you're 65 or older. So you can see that premium benefit drops down because Medicare premiums are lower than non-Medicare premiums. So if it's yourself, it's $100. If you've got more than just yourself and both of you are Medicare eligible, it's $170. If you've got the further pair of columns there, if you've got multiple people, but at least one has Medicare and at least one doesn't, then it's a combination. So $215. So if you've chosen the optional premium benefit, it's going to be taking into account like your information, their information, and it'll be like some percentage of this. So it wouldn't be more than that. So let's say it's like, 212.52 or something. And then the person would get, whatever that other amount is after you've passed away.
So where would I go just to wrap my head around what you're paying for?
You mean like the actual plans that they offer?
Yeah.
Yes. So this is just this additional benefit. This is not the actual plans. So if we go up, and actually if we go back to healthcare, that's how we got to this page, because that's ASRS premium benefit. But if you want to see the actual information about Medicare plans and non-Medicare plans, they have a separate page for them. But they have this health insurance enrollment guide. This is the same guide for all of their plans. So if we look at their guide, and this is because I was looking at page 10 earlier. So they actually have their monthly premiums for medical on page 10 and dental on page 11. So here's, $234.30. I was close. So this is for the retiree only. Medicare Advantage PPO would be $234.30 per month. That's the 2026 premiums. And then if you had family coverage plus, yourself plus one, it's $468.60. And if it's more than yourself plus one, if it's yourself plus two or more, then it jumps up to $702.90.
ASRS. It gives you that the 150 or whatever it was. You could work out the premium price and then you pay out of pocket for the other part. Is that what it goes?
So for example, if I chose, let's say I chose the group Medicare Advantage PPO. I've got just myself, one person per month, $234.30 is my premium. So that's what I'm paying for this coverage. If I've got 10 plus years of service with ASRS when I retired, then that premium benefit I could have, since I'm Medicare eligible and it's just myself, is $100. So what would happen is the ASRS, since that's all in-house for them, so they'd be billing me $134.30 for my monthly premium because they've applied $100 in premium benefit. And if you've got a pension that is more than what your ASRS premiums are, they can just deduct it from your pension payment instead of having it bill you separately. So that's how that works. Now, if you've chosen dental, either through Maricopa, Cobra, or ASRS, they'll always apply the premium benefit to the dental first because those premiums are lower than medical premiums. Whatever's left over would apply to the medical that you've chosen if you're in an eligible plan. And if you've got, let's say you chose medical with Cobra and dental with ASRS. So what would happen is they would apply your premium benefit to the dental. That's going to cover your dental premium with ASRS. The rest would be applied to your medical, which is with Cobra. Now with Cobra, since they're treating it as the same as an ASRS plan because it's through an employer of the ASRS and it's not subsidized, but it's not in-house with ASRS. So we have a third-party Cobra administrator. So if you've got Cobra coverage and there's premium benefit that needs to be applied, it takes a little bit longer to get set up because you've got to retire. We've got to, get the enrollment information from our Cobra administrator and send that to ASRS, and then they have to set up the payment. But even if it takes a couple of months before it's set up, they will catch up whatever, discount you've missed. So if you've got premium benefits from a couple of months that haven't been applied to your premiums, they'll be basically discounting your premiums going forward. So you won't lose anything. It just might take a little longer to get set up. Did that help?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, if we could have
Yes.
people use the mic just so that we can hear it in the virtual space. hear, we're not able to clearly hear when people are talking in the main room.
Yes, I apologize. I was just answering it basically like with the question that it
Yes.
was, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. There is a question in the chat. Does the ASRS include the 1 year only contract for faculty member that a faculty member may have?
So as far as ASRS is concerned, if you meet eligibility, then you meet eligibility and you're the same as, full-time, part-time, doesn't matter. 1 year only, temporary, doesn't matter. All that matters is that you meet ASRS eligibility. So eligibility is when, first of all, there's a couple of things that will exclude you from eligibility. One of them is if you are non-resident here on a particular type of visa, usually it's an F1 visa that I see. Those are excluded by statute from being able to participate in ASRS. Also, if you are a student in a student job, so you could be an employee at Maricopa who happens to take classes at Maricopa. That doesn't mean you're a student employee. You would have to be like in a work study position, in a student position. And then that category are also excluded from eligibility in ASRS. Other than that, so if none of those apply to you, then eligibility to participate is what they call the 2020. It means if you are expected to work or you actually do work at least 20 weeks in a fiscal year of at least 20 hours a week, then you are eligible for ASRS and you start contributions at that point. So if you have a 1 year only contract, that's going to be more than 20 weeks, from your start to end date. So yes, you would be eligible for ASRS from the beginning of that. 1 semester only sometimes does not get included in eligibility. And that happens if your hire date, your start date, is when accountability begins. And then when accountability ends in May, that's not 20 weeks long, that's less than 20 weeks. So if you've got an expected job end date in there that is right at the end there, HCM is what the process in HCM is going to determine that you don't meet eligibility. You're not expected to work at least 20 weeks of 20 plus hours a week. So does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
So I know for those of you that are joining us virtually, Steve will be also sharing some slides. Steve, are you ready?
I think so.
I'm trying to determine what's the best way to do this.
I know how you feel, trust me. I just have to figure out how to switch it from PC to.
Nope, Steve, I'm sharing your slides for you.
Good. So I don't have to do a thing. Perfect.
We hear you clearly. You're welcome to start whenever.
Okay. All right.
There we go.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
See it there.
I will. Thank you. Thank you. So let me just tell you that for those of you who don't know me, hi, I'm Steve Peist. I'm reading faculty here at Estrella. I've been here for years. And like I said, I recently went past my 80 points. So I have a real interest. Yes, I survived that long. And ASRC stands for the Arizona State Retirement Coalition. And Liz, if you can go to the next slide. I'm going to say a couple of things about the coalition. It is a bipartisan or nonpartisan group. And let me explain what I mean by that. It is not by party. It is by people who have an interest in retirement and preserving retirement as it is. Because every couple of years, we have some people that have other interests outside of public employees that try to change our benefit from defined benefit to defined contribution. We don't want that because that would greatly reduce and really riskify our investment in our pension. So let me just say that and get that out of the way, because a lot of people have said, well, it's one party. No, it's bipartisan. And one of the things that I do personally is I reach out to people from
both sides of the aisle who I know are ASRS, making sure that they know my name, I know their name, and say, hey, we'd like to be partners with you, making sure that we keep our pension strong. And all of them have signed on from both sides of the, or all sides of the aisle, I should say. So let me give you some good news at a glance first. Premiums on retiree insurance, which we just had some questions about, whatever, remaining the same. That is wonderful news. We have 1 year, our actual returns are at 9.9%, which means, going to number 3, our funded status is over 75%, making ASRS one of the top 5 publicly funded pensions in the US in terms of safety and risk. Now, I don't want to brag, but guess which number 1 was? And if you know me, you know the answer. Come on, you can say it. It's New York. Thank you very much. Thank you. Had to do it. But I will tell you that, and I want to give props to Wendy, because Wendy worked at ASRS at a time where they made very frugal financial decisions. You may have received a brochure in the mail either this last week, or you may be getting it this weekend, talking about the new ASRS board and the new ASRS, I don't want to say chairman because I don't think that's the right title, trustees. They are very fiscally responsible and talented people. Some have been reelected back in because they've been so good with what we're doing. That is wonderful. I only ask ASRS in the future to please send it out in Spanish as well as in English. But, you know, it is expensive, but I hope they will do that. Next slide, please. But wait, there's more. Yes, I had to do it. Next slide, please. 80% market value with over 65 billion in assets. There are very few pension systems that can brag about this. We can. And because we are self-insured, and we have self-insured status, we keep those costs down on the increase in health insurance premiums. That has saved Maricopa and Maricopa retirees and ASRS retirees a whole lot of money. And that really keeps us solvent and safe. Next slide, please. So let's talk about what unfunded liability means. This term means that pension systems have a lot of liabilities and expenses that are not yet completely covered because of the great decision-making at ASRS. In theory, now things can go wrong. And trust me, you've lived long enough to know what can possibly go wrong. Total unfunded liability is on track to disappear in 3 years. That doesn't mean it will, because there are other financial decisions and things we have to consider. But the fact that we are in so close to that is absolutely amazing. Just to give you a comparison, New York, unfunded liability on track within 4 years. So that is really a good comparison. I think this could mean that contribution rates could go down or not. And the reason is it depends on how safe we want to keep the investments and what have you. So that is really, really good news. Next slide, please. So our pension system is healthy. And we're not going to have to be bailed out like other pension systems. And yes, Alaska, I'm talking to you here. Because Alaska made so many bad decisions, I can't even say it, to the point where they let people opt out of the pension system for a high-risk invention for a pension 401k plan that got wiped out within 4 years. So Alaskan pensioners have received up to 50% cuts in their pension. That will not be us. That should never be us. And I feel a little sympathy for my brothers and sisters from Alaska. Next slide, please. So what should I do? As a pension person, that's just a lay person, whatever, stay informed by attending meetings like this. Log into your account often, and I'll be honest with you. You know, it was said before, yeah, I do that sometimes when I'm having a hard day. I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to be honest with you. I do that when I'm having a hard day. I also do that when I have colleagues who have been here for more than a few years who say the word pension. I have a pension. And that's when the hair on back of my neck stands up and I take them to my office and we look at things and what have you. Ask questions and watch all those informational videos that are on the ISRS site. Don't watch all of them in one sitting. First of all, you don't have that kind of time. And second of all, it's going to make your head spin. Just go a couple at a time that you want to ask questions about. Like I said, they are very informative, very helpful. I also will tell you that one of the things I do, like when I go to meetings with the coalition, I use the notes function in my phone, which actually does have a microphone function. If you don't feel like you can type fast enough, because I'm a terrible typist. Sometimes I leave my laptop, but I never leave my phone. And I have those notes where I can check those things. If you need help, please ask. Here's what I'm going to tell you. And if I may speak for the both of you, if I can, if you go to Wendy and TJ and you say, what should I do? They're going to say, we're not going to give you advice. We're going to give you options. That we can do. Retirement is a very personal decision. And in some cases, a very emotional one. I'm just going to give you a guess on what kind of emotion I'll be expressing on the day I finally decide. The tears will be tears of joy, I promise you. Okay? But it's a lot for people. And a lot of people don't know what the next chapter looks like. Let's be sensitive to that. Okay? Remember that your pension is yours, and retirement's not just a decision, it's a process. You can't just say, hi, it's May 1st, bye. It's not like that. You have to really, do the checking, check your P's and Q's, check what's going on with your family, and please, always update your beneficiaries. And have those discussions with your partners, because they're important discussions. And yes, do not invest in Bitcoin. For those of you who have been watching that and saw half your money disappear, yes, do not, yeah. Next slide, please. And please feel free to reach out if you do have any questions. If there's something in the site you don't understand, what have you, we will get you whatever information we can. I am always happy to sit down with people on a one-to-one basis. Again, I don't give advice. I give options. I do want to thank Wendy. I want to thank Rochelle, TJ, Dr. Liz Cantu, and the amazing CTL staff. Most importantly, I want to thank all of you for investing your time and, more importantly, your energy and your belief in your financial security. We do this together. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Oh no, I will answer any questions, but
There is-
Wendy. Well, I'll let Wendy answer.
Yeah, I was going
Yeah,
to say.
I get to take now.
There is a question. I'll read it out just to make sure everyone. So thank you for the presentation. Another question is, if I see points on the retirement page, then most likely my 1 year only was included, correct?
I know the answer to that.
What's that?
I actually know the answer.
Oh.
Because I was an OYO and it's included.
Yeah, it should be included if it was
My
OIO.
OYO, forgive me for not using the microphone, but my OYO year was included. It's there. You just have to scroll and find it.
Yeah, so I was a little unsure about the question because she mentioned points.
So how does it impact your points if you, and that means if you're a pre-2011 person. It doesn't impact your points because it's kind of at the beginning of where you were. It counts as service, which is good, and it's a service credit, but it neither subtracts nor adds, it's just there. If you are a person that is years, that is after 2011, it's a little bit of a different story because the math, although if you spend an additional 12 years, a minimum of 12 years, it doesn't really factor in, even with the years. So, trust me, I did the math. Because I have the weird situation of my wife is ASRS after 2011, I'm ASRS before 2011.
Mm.
So our displays look very different.
Right.
She did the math because me doing math is dangerous. And she did the math and said it's actually not, it would impact someone more with the years, but if you put in an additional 12 years, the table then just, it equates.
Mm.
With the before 2011 with the points, it just adds the point. It doesn't factor in either way. Like, oh, because I was an OYO, it's $3,000. It's not like that. So there's no penalty for being an OYO.
Right. Yeah, and you can also, when you're logged into your account on that left side menu, I think it's view service summary, and that will actually show you an accounting of all of your years of service credit. Yeah. From all your employers. I used to have it limited to the last 10, but now it's all of them.
Are there any other questions in the main room?
And also I want to, I don't know if I had that on my last slide, but if you have questions, or if you want to like reach out and, you know, have a face-to-face, like we can set up a Google Meet or anything, I'm happy to do that. I actually have a calendar now that you can just look for a time that works for you. I'm really here as I like to say, I'm a dot connector. I help connect the dots. So yeah, I can, I may not be able to answer every question that you have, but if I can't, I usually can figure out who to go to that can help. So yeah, I just eat, sleep, breathe retirement. So okay, well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.